Let's talk about exchange rates. Those numbers that tell you what a currency is worth. But what if I told you there's a hidden story behind those numbers? We're going to dig into the difference between what a currency's value seems to be and what it actually means for you and me and the real world. So, picture this. You see a news headline that says the US dollar has gotten, say, over 16% stronger against another currency this year. Sounds simple, right? A pretty big win for the dollar. But is that really the whole story? Not by a long shot. First up, let's talk about the number we all know and see every day. It's called the nominal exchange rate. This is the rate you see on the news, the one you get at the currency exchange booth at the airport. It's just a straight-up comparison of one currency to another.
Okay, let's use a real example. Let's say at the start of the year, $1 US buys you 3 Israeli shekels. But by the end of the year, that same dollar gets you 3.5 shekels. Just looking at that, it seems obvious. The dollar got stronger. It buys more stuff, right?
And if you do the quick math, that's a 16.6% jump for the dollar's value. So, case closed? Well, not quite, because that number only tells you about the currency itself, not about its actual purchasing power. And this is where things get really interesting. We've got to introduce a major plot twist: inflation. See, the prices of everything from coffee to cars are always changing in both countries, and that has a huge impact on what your money can actually buy. So that leads us to the big question. Is that 16.6% gain real, or is it kind of a financial mirage? To figure that out, we need to bring in the missing data. And here it is. For our little story, let's say inflation in the US was 5.4% for the year, and in Israel, it was 3.8%. These two little numbers, they are the absolute key to unlocking the real story here. All right, with this info, we can finally calculate what's called the real exchange rate. This is where we get a much, much clearer picture because it takes into account how prices actually changed in both places. Now, the logic for this is actually pretty simple when you break it down. You start with that basic nominal rate we saw earlier. Then you adjust it for the price changes in the foreign country. And then you adjust it again for the price changes right here at home. So let's see what that looks like as a formula. Here it is. This is the magic formula. The real exchange rate equals the nominal rate multiplied by the ratio of foreign inflation to domestic inflation. This is how we put all the pieces together to see what's really going on. Okay, enough theory. Let's plug our numbers in for the end of the year and see what this formula spits out. So we take our end-of-year nominal rate, which was 3.5, we multiply that by the U.S. inflation factor, that's 1 plus 0.054, and then we divide it all by the Israeli inflation factor, which is 1 plus 0.038, and what we get is 3.554. Now, you might be looking at that and thinking, okay, that's not that different from 3.5. And you're right, it doesn't seem like a huge jump. But the real story emerges when we look at the change over the entire year. So for our last step, let's compare this new real rate of 3.554 to where we started, at 3.0, and find out the true percentage change. And there it is. The real change was 18.46%. That's almost 2 full percentage points higher than what the simple nominal rate told us. The dollar's actual purchasing power got even stronger than it looked on the surface. So why does any of this matter? Why go through all this math? Well, because this isn't just some fun number game. This stuff has huge, real-world impacts on businesses, on your wallet, and on entire economies. Just look at them side by side. It's so clear. The nominal rate showed us a strong dollar, for sure. But the real rate? It shows that the dollar's actual ability to buy stuff grew even more. That's a nearly 2-point difference that businesses definitely notice. So what happened? Why was the real change bigger? Well, in our example, prices in the US went up faster than prices in Israel. That difference meant the dollar's real buying power for Israeli goods got an extra boost that the simple exchange rate didn't show. And really, this is the bottom line. If you're running a business and trying to decide whether to sell your goods overseas or buy materials from another country, you don't really care about the nominal rate. You care about the real rate. Why? Because it tells you the truth about your costs, your prices, and your potential profit. So the next time you see a headline with a simple number, just remember the real exchange rate. It's a fantastic reminder to always ask yourself, what's the full story here? What other crucial factors, like inflation, are hiding just beneath the surface?
Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever wondered how an entire country, keeps its finances straight with the rest of the world? Well, today, we're going to build a nation's balance sheet right from the ground up, from a single shipment of goods all the way to a massive international loan. Let's get into it. So, how does a country balance its books with everyone else? I mean, every single day, billions of dollars are zipping across borders for everything imaginable: cars, coffee, investments, even foreign aid. How does anyone possibly track all of that to figure out if a country is actually ahead or falling behind financially? Well, believe it or not, there's an official system for this whole thing. It's called the balance of payments. The best way to think about it is like the ultimate financial statement for a country. Its job is to track every single dollar that comes in and every single dollar that goes out. So let's break down exactly how it works. Okay, we're going to start with the part that's probably most familiar to all of us, the commercial balance. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It just tracks all the goods and services a country buys from and sells to the rest of the world. It's basically the nation's international shopping list. Now, before we get to any numbers, we have got to get two key terms straight. On one side of the ledger, you have credits. That's any transaction that brings money into the country. Just think of it as income. And on the other side, you have debits. That's any money leaving the country. Think of those as expenses. Simple, right? Every single transaction from here on out will be one of these two. So let's plug in some simple numbers to see how this works. Let's say our country exports $100 million worth of stuff. That's money coming in, so it's a credit. But at the same time, the country imports $150 million worth of products from other places. That's money going out, a debit. So after all that buying and selling, where does that leave us? We're in the red. $50 million in the red, to be exact. The country spent more on things from abroad than it earned by selling its own things. And this negative number has a specific name. It's a commercial deficit. It just means that when you only look at trade, more money left the country than came in. But is that the whole story? Oh, not even close. You see, trade is just one piece of this puzzle. To really get the bigger picture, we need to zoom out a little to what's called the current account. So what about all the money that moves between countries that isn't for a product or a service? Think about things like foreign aid or donations from charities or even money that people working abroad send back home to their families. These are called unilateral transfers, and trust me, they can have a huge impact on the final balance. Let's look at some real-world examples to make this clear. When the U.S. provides aid to Israel, that's a credit for Israel. Dollars are flowing in. But when Israel provides aid to, say, build a hospital in Ukraine or sends a relief mission to Turkey after an earthquake, that's a debit for Israel. Dollars are flowing out. Okay, so let's add these grants and aid figures to our balance sheet. Let's imagine our country received a whopping $250 million in grants, but only gave away about $20 million in aid. We just add those right on top of our trade numbers, and all of a sudden, the total income is $350 million, and the total expenses are $170 million. Wow, the picture has completely flipped. And just like that, we're not in a deficit anymore. After we account for all that aid, our country now has what's called a current account surplus of $180 million. But hold on, we are not done yet. There's still one more major piece to this puzzle. All right, now we move to the financial account. This is where we track all the money that's flowing across borders for investment purposes. We're talking about buying stocks, real estate, or even making and repaying big loans. Let's walk through the numbers here. So, for money coming in, we had foreigners buy $50 million in local stocks and $100 million in real estate. Plus, the government took out a $300 million loan. Add that all up, and you get $450 million in credits. But look at the money going out. Our own citizens bought $500 million in foreign stocks, and our government paid back an old $500 million loan. That is a full $1 billion going out the door. So when you look at just the financial world, our country has a massive deficit of $550 million. Way more money left the country for investments and loan payments than came in. All right, this is the moment of truth. We have our current account balance and we have our financial account balance. It's time to put it all together and see where our nation really stands with the rest of the world. Now, the calculation itself is actually pretty simple. You just take the balance of the current account and you add the balance of the financial account. But there's a really common trap here that's super easy to fall into. Here's the crucial thing to remember. You never add the commercial balance separately at the end. And why not? Because, remember,
It's already included inside the current account. If we added it again, we'd be counting that initial trade deficit twice, and that would mess up the whole thing. Okay, here they are, our two key numbers: a surplus of $180 million from the current account and a deficit of $550 million from the financial account. Let's add them together and get our grand total. And the final result is an overall deficit of $370 million. When you account for absolutely everything, all the buying, the selling, the aid, the investing, our country sent $370 million more out into the world than it took in. Now, this isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. This is a real shortfall. A country can't just end the year with a negative balance, right? It actually needs to find $370 million from somewhere to make its books balance. So where does that money come from? This is where a nation's emergency fund comes into play. It's foreign currency reserves. The easiest way to think about this is like a giant savings account that the central bank holds, and it's filled with other currencies, like US dollars or euros. Its main job is to cover shortfalls, exactly like the one we have right now. And this right here is the final step that makes everything balance out perfectly to zero. The central bank just dips into those reserves and uses $370 million to cover that deficit. The books are now officially balanced, but it came at a price. The nation's savings account just got smaller. And that leads us to the really critical question, doesn't it? I mean, balancing the books one time by using your savings, that's fine. But what happens to a country's economy, to its currency, to its standing in the world, if it has to do this year after year after year, just watching that emergency fund slowly drain away? That right there is the real story behind the balance of payments. All right, today we're going to tackle something that hits all of us, whether we're planning a trip or just watching the global news. Currency exchange rates. You know, how they really work. Let's break it all down. I mean, have you ever looked at the price of a dollar and wondered, why is it different today than it was yesterday? You've seen it if you've ever bought something from another country online, right? So what's really going on behind those ever-changing numbers? Let's find out. Okay, first things first, before we can get into the complicated stuff, we need to get a really solid handle on the basics. So what exactly is an exchange rate? Well, in the simplest terms, the nominal exchange rate is just a price tag. It tells you exactly how much of your own currency you need to buy one single unit of a foreign currency. It's a straight-up currency-for-currency trade. So, for example, if you see that $1 US equals 3.65 Israeli shekels, well, that's it. That number is just giving you a snapshot, a direct comparison of their values right at that particular moment in time. But here's where it gets interesting. That number, it's almost never the same for long. It's always moving, always shifting in one of two basic directions. And these movements have names, of course. When your local money gets stronger, we call that appreciation. Think of it this way. You need less of your cash to buy that foreign currency. On the other hand, when it gets weaker, that's called depreciation, and now you need more of your money for the same amount. Let's stick with our example. For appreciation, imagine the shekel strengthens. Suddenly, that $1 US doesn't cost 3.65 shekels anymore. Maybe it only costs 3.00. See? You need fewer shekels to buy that same exact dollar. Your money just got more powerful. And you guessed it, depreciation is the exact opposite. If the shekel weakens, that rate might jump up to 4.00. Now it takes more shekels to get your hands on that same single US dollar. Your currency is weaker, at least when compared to the dollar. Okay, so we get it. Currencies go up, they go down. But the next logical question is, by how much? Let's get practical and look at a real-world example to see how you can actually calculate this stuff. So let's look at 2023. At the very beginning of the year, $1 US would have cost you 3.67 shekels. Fast forward to the end of the year, and that same dollar now costs 3.82 shekels. Right away, you can see it's taking more shekels to buy a dollar. So we already know the direction, right? The shekel depreciated. But by exactly how much? What's the percentage? Well, there's a really simple formula we can use to nail down that exact nominal change. And here it is. This is our key. You take the new rate and you divide it by the old rate, then you subtract 1,
That little step is what isolates the change itself. And finally, you multiply the whole thing by 100 to turn it into a nice, easy-to-understand percentage.
So let's just plug in the numbers from our 2023 example. We take the new rate, 3.82, and divide it by the old one, 3.67. That gives us about 1.0408. Now, subtract 1, and we're left with 0.0408. Multiply that by 100, and we've got our answer. And there it is, a positive 4.08%. So what does that tell us? It tells us the Israeli shekel had a nominal depreciation of 4.08% against the dollar in 2023. That positive number is the key. It confirms the currency got weaker.
Okay, that's pretty cool, right? But hang on a second. Knowing this number is great, but it's really just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. There's another layer to all of this that we absolutely have to talk about.
So is the nominal exchange rate the whole story? The answer is not even close. And this is where we get to a really important idea that adds a whole new dimension to what a currency's value truly means. You see, everything we've looked at so far is the nominal exchange rate. It's just currency versus currency. But the real exchange rate? Now that's different. It tries to answer a much more practical question. Okay, but what can my money actually buy over there? And to answer that, you have to bring in one huge factor: inflation.
This is what it's all about, really. The real rate is what tells you about your true purchasing power. It helps you understand if that vacation or that laptop from overseas is actually getting cheaper or more expensive for you once you account for price changes in both countries. At the end of the day, this is what really matters to your wallet.
And that leaves us with this really powerful idea to chew on. How does inflation completely change the game for the real power of your money abroad? Think about it. A currency could look like it's getting weaker, but if inflation is skyrocketing in the other country, your weaker money might actually buy you more stuff than it did before. It's the perfect reminder that in the world of economics, the first number you see is almost never the whole story.
Today, we're going to do more than just talk about economics. We're actually going to solve a puzzle, and we're going to use real numbers from Israel's economy in 2022 to do it.
Okay, let's dive right in. What you see here are 7 major financial events that happened in a single year. You can think of them as puzzle pieces. Our job is to figure out how to arrange these pieces to tell the story of a nation's economy. So you're looking at all this, right? Exports, loans, real estate. Where do you even begin to make sense of it all? Well, to solve any puzzle, you need the right tool.
And that tool is called the balance of payments. It's basically a country's official scorecard for every single financial transaction it has with the rest of the world.
The simplest way to think about it is like a country's bank statement with the whole world. Seriously, money coming in is a credit, like a deposit, and money going out is a debit, like a withdrawal. That's it.
Now, what's really interesting is how we organize all these flows of money. We split them into 2 main buckets: the current account, which is for day-to-day stuff like trade, and the financial account, which is for bigger investments. So let's build this thing out transaction by transaction and put each piece where it belongs.
All right, let's start slotting these in. The government grant and the exports, that's money coming into the country, so that's a credit in the current account. Imports are also in the current account, but that's money flowing out, so it's a debit. Now, things like repaying a loan or buying stocks and real estate in another country, those are long-term investments, so they go into the financial account, and since the money is leaving Israel, they're all debits.
But hold on a second. What about that last item? An Israeli bank paying interest to Israeli investors. This is a classic misdirection you see in problems like this. It's a huge amount of money, but where does it fit in our puzzle? And here is the absolute #1 rule you have to remember. Because this transaction happened completely inside Israel between 2 Israeli parties, it doesn't belong on the balance of payments at all. It's not money flowing in or out of the country. It's a distractor, a red herring, just to make sure we're paying attention. Okay, now that we've tossed out that trick piece, we can finally get to the answer. With all the real international transactions in place, it's time to do the math.
So first we add up all the credits, all the money that came into Israel. That comes out to $1.4 billion. Then we add up all the debits, all the money that left Israel, and that total is $1.86 billion. So what's the bottom line? Well, you take the money in and you subtract the money out, and you get this number, negative $460 million.
And that is the solution to our puzzle.
So what does a negative number here actually mean? It means the country spent more foreign money than it brought in. That's what we call a balance of payments deficit. And just like if you spend more than you make in a month, you have to dip into your savings, right? A country does the same thing. To cover that shortfall, Israel had to dip into its savings of foreign currency, which means its reserves went down by $460 million that year.
Okay, great. We solved the puzzle, we got the number, but why should anyone care? Why does this actually matter to a normal person? Well, it all connects to one of the most powerful forces in the entire economy, the exchange rate.
And this right here, this shows a fundamental economic tug-of-war. Think about it. When the dollar is strong, meaning it's worth more shekels, Israeli exporters are thrilled. $1 million sale overseas suddenly brings in way more shekels back home. But for importers and regular consumers, it's bad news. All that stuff we buy from other countries, cars, phones, clothes, it all just got more expensive. It's this constant balancing act.
And this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It kicks off this powerful chain reaction, like a set of dominoes falling through the whole economy. A higher dollar exchange rate makes exporting more profitable. So what do those profitable companies do? They expand. They grow. And to grow, they have to hire more people. And more people getting hired means, eventually, the entire country's unemployment rate can go down.
Now, because this connection is so incredibly important, you can bet that most countries don't just sit back and hope for the best. Oh no, they have a strategy. Israel's strategy is something called a managed float. The idea is to kickstart that exact chain reaction we just saw. So, the Bank of Israel doesn't just watch from the sidelines, it actively jumps into the market and buys up billions of US dollars. All this buying creates artificial demand, which pushes the dollar's value higher and gives that all-important boost to the nation's exporters.
So what's the long-term result of this managed float policy? Well, look at this number. Over the decades, Israel has built up a massive war chest of foreign currency reserves. We're talking about $220 billion. This isn't an accident. It's the financial firepower they've built up from years of strategically managing their currency.
And that brings us right back to where we started, with a puzzle. That $460 million deficit we calculated seems pretty small now, but we can see it's part of a much bigger, much more delicate picture. A country can manage its currency to boost jobs, which is great, but the trade-off is that it often makes things more expensive for its own citizens. So that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question for you to think about. How much control is too much, and who gets to decide on the right balance?